Welcome back to the deep dive. I'm so glad you're here today because we are tackling a situation that I think, honestly, every single person listening has faced.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's one you've probably dreaded more than a root canal. It's that very specific moment in your professional life where, your heart rate just spikes.
Your palms get a little sweaty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you have to make this split-second choice between being honest and, being employed.
Right. It's the universal nightmare of the corporate world. It is the exact moment where truth collides with hierarchy.
Yes, that is exactly it. And today we are looking at a really fascinating set of materials from negotiation experts Emma and John. They've done this extensive breakdown, specifically focusing on what they call the art of diplomatic disagreement.
Which is such a vital skill.
It really is. And the scenario they paint right at the start of their discussion is so visceral. I want everyone listening to picture this right now. You are sitting across from a boss, or maybe a high-stakes client.
Someone who essentially holds your financial future in their hands.
Right. The room is quiet. And then they slide a proposal across the table to you.
And this isn't just any proposal. It's usually presented with a big smile. It's presented with total confidence.
Right. They call it, and I absolutely love this euphemism they use in the source material. They call it an optimistic proposal.
Which is really just polite corporate speak for completely impossible or, borderline delusional.
Delusional is the perfect word. Optimistic is such a gentle way to put it. I mean, we're talking about a budget that is, frankly, laughable, or a deadline that literally defies the laws of physics.
The source material actually uses the specific example of a timeline that is just way too tight to deliver any kind of quality work.
Let's be real. It could be anything. It could be a client saying, we want all the features of the premium tier, but we only want to pay for the basic tier.
Oh, yeah. The classic scope creep.
So you're staring at this optimistic idea, and your gut reaction, the thing your lizard brain is screaming at you to do, is to just shout, no, that's wrong. We absolutely cannot do that.
And that instinct makes total sense. I mean, it's a survival mechanism, really. You see a threat, in this case, a bad idea that is definitely going to lead to failure or burnout or a lost client, and you just want to neutralize it immediately.
You want to stop the train before it leaves the station.
Exactly. And this is really the crux of our entire deep dive today, acting on that raw instinct in a high-level professional setting, is what Emma and John refer to as a career-limiting move.
A career-limiting move. I feel a chill just hearing that phrase. It's such a beautifully sanitized way of saying you're going to get fired or you're never getting promoted.
Right. But this really sets up the core tension we need to unpack today. Because on one hand, you cannot be the yes person who just agrees to a disaster.
Because if you agree to the impossible deadline, you fail.
Precisely. If you accept a bad premise, you own the bad result. The boss isn't going to remember that they forced you into it.
No, they never do.
They'll just remember that you didn't deliver.
But then on the other hand, you can't be the no person either. I mean, nobody likes the person who just shoots down every single idea. The person who blocks progress and is always seen as, difficult.
You want to be the solution person. You want to be the one who makes things happen, not the one who stops things from happening.
That is such a tightrope to walk.
It really is. You have to kill the bad idea. You absolutely must dismantle the argument, but you have to do it without destroying the relationship with the person sitting across the table.
You have to somehow reject the request while completely validating the requester.
Yes.
Honestly, it sounds like a magic trick or like some kind of corporate hypnosis.
It's not magic, though. It's just very high-level communication.
Okay.
The source material actually refers to this as C-suite level communication.
Right.
It's about leaving the rigid roles of grammar textbooks behind and really stepping into the psychology of the boardroom. It's about nuance. It's about understanding that in business, being right is really only half the battle.
And the other half?
The other half is getting the other person to actually accept that you're right.
Wow. Okay, so our mission today is to decode that exact nuance. We are going to look at the specific tools, the words, the sentence structures that Emma and John highlight in their discussion. We're going to learn how to tell someone they are dead wrong, but make them feel like you are totally on their side.
And we have a really comprehensive toolkit to get through today.
Yeah.
Everything from grammar hacks to what is essentially psychological jujitsu.
Which, by the way, is a skill that pays dividends not just in business, but in life.
Oh, absolutely. Marriages, friendships, negotiating with your kids, this stuff applies everywhere.
I might need to try some of this on my toddler. But let's jump straight into the first trap. The source material identifies one specific habit that is apparently the single most common mistake people make when they try to disagree politely. They call it the yes but trap.
This is ubiquitous. You hear it in every meeting, every coffee shop conversation. It really is the default setting for human disagreement.
It totally is.
Someone says something you disagree with, and you want to soften the blow, right? So you start with agreement. You say, I agree with you, but...
I agree, but... It sounds so perfectly reasonable. I feel like I do this all the time. It feels like I'm being nice, like I'm validating you first, and then I'm just adding my 2 cents.
It definitely feels nice to the speaker. It feels like a feedback sandwich. You know, a nice layer of agreement, a layer of criticism, maybe another layer of agreement at the end if you're feeling generous.
Right.
But we have to analyze what's actually happening for the listener in that moment. The source material calls the word, but a verbal eraser.
A verbal eraser. That is such a strong, vivid image. Okay, let's really unpack this. How does a simple 3-letter conjunction erase anything?
Well, think about the structure of that sentence. I agree with you, but... Grammatically, sure, but it's just a harmless conjunction. It's a pivot. However, psychologically, it acts as a weapon. It's a signal that completely negates everything that came before it. When the human brain hears the word, but in a feedback loop, it instinctively categorizes the first part of the sentence as fluff.
Wow.
It's just the preamble. It's the manipulation. It's not the truth. The listener only hears what comes after the but.
Emma and John give a really great example of this in the source. They say, imagine someone tells you, you did a great job, but you missed the deadline.
Exactly. When you hear that, do you honestly feel complimented on the great job?
Not at all. I don't even remember the great job part. All my brain processes the criticism. It feels like the compliment was a total lie.
Yes.
It feels manipulative, actually. Like you were just buttering me up so you could slap me.
That is exactly the danger. It erodes trust over time. It trains people to constantly wait for the other shoe to drop. If every single time I compliment you, I follow it up with a but, you are eventually going to stop believing my compliments altogether.
That is so true. It's like, oh, here it comes. What did I do wrong this time?
Right. And in a business negotiation, it's actually even worse. Because if I say to you, I see your point, but we don't have the budget, what I'm really saying to you is your point doesn't matter because we don't have the budget.
Ouch. Yeah.
The but creates a wall. It immediately positions us as adversaries. You are on one side of the table with your idea, and I am on the other side with my but.
It effectively just shuts down the collaboration entirely. It turns what could be a conversation into a debate.
Yeah.
You have your position, I have my position, and that little word is the friction point grinding between them.
And we know what happens when people feel friction. They push back, they get extremely defensive, they stop listening to whatever your logical reasons are, and they just start formulating their counter-arguments in their head while you're still talking.
So by using but, you are actively making it harder for them to hear the reality of the situation you're trying to explain. Okay, but is this toxic verbal erasure? What on earth is the alternative? Because we still have to deal with the reality that we don't have the budget. We can't just lie and say yes to everything. We have to deliver the bad news. We just need a delivery vehicle that doesn't, explode on impact.
Which brings us to the first major upgrade in our communication toolkit. And the source borrows this from a really surprising place.
I love this part.
The world of improv comedy.
Improv comedy in the corporate boardroom. It seems so counterintuitive because business is supposed to be very serious and improv is, well, funny.
Yeah.
But the mechanics of communication are exactly the same.
They are. It's the yes and technique. In improv, the cardinal rule is that you never block your scene partner.
Right.
If your scene partner steps up and says, look at this giant purple elephant, and you respond with, no, that's just a chair, the scene dies instantly. You've blocked their reality. You've killed the momentum.
It just becomes painfully awkward. The audience stops laughing. The actors are stuck.
Exactly. But if you say, yes, that is a purple elephant, and he looks like he's incredibly hungry, the scene continues. You've accepted their reality and you've built upon it. You've added to the scene rather than subtracting from it.
Okay, so how do we actually apply the purple elephant rule to a tense budget meeting? Because if my boss says, we need to launch this massive new product next week, and I just say, yes, I am agreeing to something completely impossible.
And that is the most common misconception about this technique. Yes, and doesn't mean, yes, I agree with your conclusion and we will do it.
Right.
It means, yes, I accept your reality and I am adding a new dimension to it.
That is such a crucial distinction. Accepting the reality versus agreeing with the conclusion.
Let's look at the old way first to contrast it. The old way is, I see your point, but we don't have the budget. As we established, that's a stop sign.
Dead end. conversation is over, or it turns into a shouting match.
Now let's swap that but for an and. The source suggests saying something like, I see your point, and to achieve that, we'll need to look at adjusting the budget.
Whoa. Okay, let me just sit with that for a second. Say that again. I see your point. And to achieve that.
We'll need to look at adjusting the budget.
That feels completely different. It feels so much more fluid.
It is a subtle word swap, but the dynamic shift in the room is massive. When you use and, you aren't blocking them. You are actively collaborating. You are essentially telling them, I am accepting your goal. I am sitting on your side of the table right next to you. And looking at this problem together, I am adding a condition to your reality that makes your goal possible.
It sounds like you are solving a complex puzzle together rather than fighting over scarce resources. It shifts the dynamic from me versus you to us versus the problem.
Precisely. You are staying on the same side of the table. You aren't telling them their idea is bad. You are simply pointing out that their idea has requirements. Yes, we can totally do that aggressive timeline, and it will require us to hire 2 more external contractors to hit it.
It puts the ball back in their court, but in a really helpful, constructive way. It's not a hard no, it's a yes if.
And that completely prevents the defensive reaction that usually comes up when people hear the word but, because you haven't rejected them at all. You've engaged with them, you've taken their optimistic proposals seriously enough to figure out what it would actually take in the real world to achieve it.
I really love that. It's the pivot versus the block. Yes,
Yeah.
and keeps the energy moving forward. It feels incredibly proactive. Like, yes, we can absolutely launch next week, and that means we will have to cut feature set B and C from this initial release.
Exactly. You're giving them a choice. You're giving them agency, not a refusal.
Okay, so yes and is a fantastic tool when you can actually find a way to make it work, or when there is a clear trade-off to be made. But we have to address the harder scenario.
Let's do it.
What about when you just can't? What about when the idea is genuinely just bad? Or factually incorrect, or maybe it's a matter of strategy where you fundamentally disagree with the direction the client wants to go. You can't really yes and a terrible strategy.
Right. Sometimes you truly cannot say yes. Sometimes the logic they're using is deeply flawed. Sometimes that optimistic proposal is actually dangerous to the company.
Emma and John are very, very clear about this next point in the source material. They say you never, ever say the words, you are wrong.
Never. Because saying you are wrong is a direct ego attack. And once you attack someone's ego in any kind of negotiation, logic completely leaves the room.
It's just gone.
Gone. They will defend their terrible idea to the bitter end just to save face. It stops being about finding the truth, and it becomes entirely about dominance.
So if we can't say yes, and we definitely can't say you're wrong, we need what the source calls the vocabulary of partial agreement.
This is all about validating the perspective, even if you entirely reject the conclusion. You have to make the other person feel heard and understood before you can even attempt to guide them to a different outcome.
As you said earlier, you have to lower the bridge before you can cross the moat.
Yeah.
So Emma and John break down a few very specific phrases that they say make a speaker sound thoughtful, and I love this specific descriptor they used, expensive.
Expensive is such a perfect way to put it. These phrases signal high status in a boardroom. They signal that you are a thinker, not just a reactive emotional person. Low-status communication is impulsive and argumentative. High-status communication is deliberate, calm, and diplomatic.
Let's look at the first phrase from their toolkit. It is deceptively simple. I see where you're coming from.
Simple, classic, but incredibly effective. Notice what it's actually doing. It does not say, I agree with your idea. It says, I validate your logic. I see the path your brain took to get to this point.
It successfully separates the person from the problem. It basically says, I see you.
Exactly. It lowers their defenses immediately. If I look you in the eye and say, I see where you're coming from, you feel understood. And as a result, you are significantly more likely to listen to whatever I say next because I've already proven that I was listening to you. It satisfies a very deep human need for validation.
It's like the client thinks, okay, this person gets it. They aren't an idiot. They understand exactly why I asked for this impossible thing.
Right. And once they feel that you understand them, their mind opens up. They become much more receptive to correction or alternative ideas.
Okay, here is the second phrase, and John in the source material called this one a scalpel. The phrase is, that is a valid point, specifically regarding X, however.
This one might actually be my favorite. It is truly surgical.
Why is it a scalpel? Break that down for us.
Because you are slicing off a tiny, tiny piece of their overall argument, the one single piece that actually makes sense, and you are agreeing with only that piece.
Right.
So you say that is a valid point, specifically regarding the urgent need for speed, however.
Oh, I see. You are aggressively narrowing your agreement to a pinpoint.
Yes. You aren't agreeing to the whole messy, impossible proposal. You aren't agreeing to the terrible budget or the crazy timeline. You are scanning their argument, finding the one golden nugget of truth, like, we need to move fast. You're holding it up, validating it, and then using that exact nugget as a pivot point to address the fatal flaws in the rest of their plan.
That is just masterful. It makes you sound so incredibly reasonable. You're saying, look, I am giving you full credit for this one specific thing.
And it makes it exceedingly hard for them to argue back because you have quite literally just agreed with them. You've aligned yourself with them on the need for speed. So now you can safely discuss why their proposed method won't actually achieve that speed. You aren't fighting about the end goal anymore. You're just debating the tactic.
It shifts the entire debate from what are we doing to how are we doing it, which is a vastly safer ground to operate on.
Exactly. It diffuses the tension.
Okay, let's look at the third phrase in this high-status toolkit. This one is for when you need to be really tentative but hold a firm boundary. It sounds extremely diplomatic. The phrase is, I'm inclined to agree with you on the principle, though the execution might be tricky.
I'm inclined to agree.
It does sound expensive.
Eh?
Sounds like something a seasoned diplomat would say while sipping espresso in Geneva.
It's brilliant because it creates distance. I am inclined to agree. It is not a full endorsement. It signals an open-minded posture. It tells them, I am entirely willing to be convinced here, but I see significant obstacles ahead.
It's really a soft no.
It is. It's a soft note, beautifully wrapped in a compliment. You agree on the principle, the big picture visionary idea, but you are effectively killing the execution, which is the actual concrete plan.
Right.
So you might say, I'm inclined to agree with the principle of drastically cutting our overhead costs, though the execution of firing half the engineering staff today might be tricky.
Tricky. That is the understatement of the century. But it works. It totally keeps the conversation alive instead of killing it on contact.
And that's the ultimate goal here. Keep the conversation breathing until you can safely steer it to a much better outcome. If you just flat out say, no, we can't fire everyone, you get an immediate fight. If you say, the execution might be tricky, you invite a conversation about exactly why it's tricky.
And walking through that conversation naturally leads to the realization that it's just a terrible idea.
Exactly. You guide them there.
Okay, so we've got the yes and pivot, and we've got our expensive vocabulary of partial agreement. Now, I want to get to the part of Emma and John's material that I personally found the most fascinating. This is the strategy that they referred to as Machiavellian.
Ah, yes. The incredible power of the hypothetical scenario.
Now, the source briefly links this to conditionals in grammar, but in actual practice, it's really about weaponizing the word suppose.
This is your go-to move for when you are truly stuck. When the yes and hasn't worked, when the scalpel didn't cut deep enough, when the client or the boss is just stubbornly digging their heels in and refusing to budge, you have to stop arguing facts. You stop fighting about the present reality. Instead, you gently invite them into a simulation.
A simulation. Explain how that works in a meeting.
When you argue facts, for example, you say, we categorically cannot lower the price of this software. You immediately trigger a conflict. Their brain instantly responds with, yes, you can, you just don't want to. It becomes a clash of wills.
Right.
I am the boss, I say lower the price. I am the expert, I say we can't.
Right. It devolves into a power struggle. And let's be honest, usually the person with the higher title or the one holding the purse strings wins the power struggle, even if they are factually wrong.
Always. But when you deploy the word suppose, you are essentially saying, let's just play a game of pretend for a minute. You ask them, suppose we were to lower the price to what you're asking. What would that look like for our ongoing service levels?
Okay, I definitely see the shift there. You aren't flatly saying we can't do it. You were saying, imagine we actually did it.
Exactly. You are asking them to mentally simulate the disaster scenario themselves. And here's exactly why Emma and John called it Machiavellian in a very positive, productive way. You are forcing them to run the simulation in their own head and discover the catastrophic outcome all on their own.
Because they have to answer the question you just asked.
Yeah.
They have to sit there and think, okay, if we lower the price, well, we'd have significantly less revenue coming in. So you'd have to cut internal costs, which means we'd have to cut the 24-hour customer support team.
And the very moment they realize that, the no is coming from inside their own brain. It's not coming from you.
That is the absolute key. It's not you, the employee, saying no. It's the inescapable logic of the situation saying no.
And psychologically, it is infinitely more powerful for someone to realize a bad outcome on their own than to be lectured about it by you. If you tell them, we'll lose our premium support, they might just argue with you. They might say, oh, well, the existing team can just work a little harder.
Right, they'll rationalize it.
But if they discover, oh, wait, we'll lose support, through their own internal mental math, it immediately becomes their truth. You can't argue with your own realization.
You're basically letting them hold the weapon and kill their own bad idea.
You are guiding them directly to the murder weapon, yes.
That is so dark, but I absolutely love it. It's not actually manipulation, though, is it? I remember John specifically corrected Emma on this point in the source video.
No, it's not manipulation at all because you aren't tricking them into anything. You are dealing strictly with reality. The objective reality is that drastically lower prices mean significantly lower service. You are simply using the suppose framework to help them see that reality clearly without their ego blocking the view.
Yeah.
You're removing the temporary blindness that comes with their strong desire for that optimistic outcome.
It's a guided discovery. So you could say, suppose we shorten the QA timeline by 2 weeks. What specific risks would that introduce to the final product launch?
That is a perfect example. Now they are forced to list the risks out loud. And by the time they finish listing those risks, the critical bugs, the server crashes, the massive security holes, they are almost always the ones saying, you know what, on second thought, maybe we should just stick to the original timeline.
And you just get to sit there quietly and say, I'm inclined to agree.
Exactly. You let them talk themselves completely out of their own proposal.
I really want to dig into another common scenario for suppose. What about the classic issue of scope creep? Because that is such a massive headache for consultants, freelancers, even internal product teams. You agree on a project you're halfway through, and then the client says, hey, can you just add this one little extra feature?
Oh, the dreaded just one little thing. It is never, ever a little thing.
Right. It always cascades. So how do we effectively use suppose in that exact moment?
You can respond with, suppose we added that new feature to this current sprint. What existing feature would we need to remove from the current list to make room for it?
Oh, that is brilliant. What would we need to remove? You are fully accepting the premise. Sure, we can add the feature, but you are aggressively forcing them to acknowledge the necessary trade-off.
And if they push back and say, oh, we can't remove anything, everything on the list is a top priority, then you just pivot again. You say, I see. So if the scope is completely fixed and the timeline is totally fixed, suppose we move this brand new feature to phase 2. How would that impact your initial launch goals?
You are just constantly, gently guiding them down this logical decision tree until they finally find a branch that can actually hold their weight.
Exactly. You are never blocking them.
Yeah.
You are helping them optimize. You are saying, I really want to help you fit this new toy into the box, but the box is completely full. Which old toy do you want to take out?
This whole concept is really about controlling the frame of the conversation, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's about physically and mentally moving from a face-to-face adversarial confrontation to a side-by-side collaborative examination of the problem. You stop staring at each other in a standoff and you start staring at the problem together. Speaking of framing, that leads us perfectly into the final major tool we pulled from Emma and John's material. And this one involves bringing back an old friend from our high school English classes.
The much maligned passive voice.
We were all taught, aggressively taught, that the passive voice is terrible, right? It's weak writing. Mistakes were made. It's Weasley. It's exactly what politicians say when they get caught doing something highly unethical.
And in creative writing or journalism, yes, the passive voice is usually bad. It hides the active subject. It drains all the kinetic energy out of a sentence. But in conflict resolution, in a tense boardroom, passive voice is an absolute superpower.
The source material spends a lot of time talking about using the passive voice specifically to depersonalize the conflict.
Let's look at the core difference here. Active voice inherently focuses on the actor, the specific person doing the thing. So if I use active voice in a heated disagreement, I might point at you and say, you are demanding way too much.
You are demanding. That immediately feels like a personal attack.
Yeah.
You as the subject, it feels like you are attacking my fundamental character.
And what is your natural, visceral reaction when I say that to you?
I instantly want to defend myself.
Yeah.
I want to yell back, no, I'm not demanding, I'm just ambitious. I'm just trying to get this project done on time.
Right. And just like that, the temperature in the room just went up 10 degrees. We are now in a very personal fight about whether or not you are a demanding person. We aren't even talking about the actual project scope anymore. The project is forgotten.
So how do we fix this with grammar?
Let's transform that exact same sentence using the passive voice toolkit that Emma and John provided. Instead of saying you are demanding too much, we shift it and say, it seems that the expectations are currently misaligned with the available resources.
It seems that expectations are misaligned.
Where is the you in that sentence?
It's completely gone.
And where's the me?
Also gone.
Exactly. There are no people left in the sentence. There are only expectations and resources.
And they are misaligned. It sounds like a mechanical failure, not a personal moral failure. It sounds like a gear in a machine that just doesn't fit quite right.
Exactly. It completely removes the blame from the table. We aren't fighting each other anymore. We're both looking objectively at a third object, the expectations, and we're just noticing together that they don't mathematically fit the resources.
It magically turns the fight back into a puzzle. It's like, oh, look at this interesting issue over here. The expectations don't fit. How do we solve this puzzle?
And that lowers the emotional temperature of the room immediately. It allows the other person to completely save face. They aren't being unreasonable or demanding. The expectations are just, slightly misaligned.
It is genuinely amazing how much heavy lifting basic grammar can do in a professional relationship.
Language dictates our reality. If you use harsh, accusatory language, you create a very real environment of conflict. If you use depersonalized, passive language, you create a reality of objective, shared problem solving.
Let's actually do a little rapid fire practice round right here. I want to throw some really aggressive active voice attacks at you, and I want you to instantly translate them into passive voice diplomacy.
I love it. I'm ready. Hit me.
Okay, here's a classic one. You made a huge mistake in this financial report.
Ouch. Okay, translation. There seem to be some discrepancies in the data presented here.
Discrepancies. That is such a good safe word. It sounds highly scientific. It doesn't sound like errors or mistakes, which sounds like an F on a math test. Discrepancy sounds like a fascinating anomaly that we just need to investigate together.
And notice the subject I used. There seem to be. It's totally vague. It just hovers in the air harmlessly.
Okay, next one. You are consistently late to these meetings.
That is a huge emotional trigger for people. Translation. It seems we are running a bit behind schedule today.
We? That is another really powerful shift. Moving from you are late to we are running behind.
We is the ultimate collaborative pronoun. Even if you are the one who is clearly, obviously late, if I say we are running behind, I am graciously taking on some of that burden. I am creating a shared we problem, not an isolating you problem.
Which honestly makes me, the person who's late, feel significantly less defensive and way more likely to just apologize and get straight to work.
Exactly. Because shame completely shuts people down. Diplomacy opens them back up.
Okay, one more. Your idea simply won't work.
Brutal. Translation. It appears there might be some structural challenges with that specific approach.
Structural challenges. Again, it's totally about the object, the idea, not the person who came up with it.
And using the word challenges implies something that can actively be overcome, or at least analyzed. Saying won't work is a brick wall. Structural challenges is an open door, an invitation to problem solve together.
I really love this. It's like we are learning an entirely new language today. But I do have to ask, is there a risk here of sounding a bit robotic? Like if I go around saying, it seems expectations are misaligned to my spouse at home, they might look at me like I've been replaced by some corporate AI.
That's a very fair point. Yes, context matters immensely. You always have to match the register and tone of the conversation you're in. With a spouse or a close friend, maybe you don't use the phrase misaligned expectations, but the underlying principle remains exactly the same.
So what does that actually look like in a home environment?
Well, instead of saying you never do the dishes, which is highly active, very accusatory, and guaranteed to start a fight, you try saying the dishes are piling up and it's creating a lot of stress in the kitchen.
The dishes are piling up, passive voice, the dishes are magically doing the piling all by themselves.
Exactly. The dishes are the problem, not the spouse. It invites your partner to help you solve the dish problem rather than forcing them to defend their personal honor as a dishwasher.
It is so subtle, but it fundamentally changes the energy in the room.
It creates psychological safety, and when people feel safe, they naturally cooperate.
So we have built quite an impressive arsenal here today based on Emma and John's work. Let's do a quick recap of everything we've uncovered in this deep dive.
It really is a logical progression. We started with the fundamental mindset shift, realizing that the yes-but structure is a dangerous trap. It's a verbal erasure that completely wipes out trust. It secretly tells the other person, I'm just waiting for my turn to speak and tell you why you're wrong.
Right. And then we replace that trap with yes and. The classic improv technique. I see your point, and to get there, we need X. It keeps the collaboration alive and moving forward.
Then we moved on to the highly specific vocabulary for when you simply cannot say yes, the expensive phrases, I'm inclined to agree with the principle, or that's a valid point, specifically regarding these are the refined tools of the corporate diplomat.
Then we got wonderfully Machiavellian with the supposed technique, running the mental simulation, letting them walk straight into the wall themselves so you don't have to be the one to push them. Suppose we lowered the price.
And finally, we finished with the passive voice, depersonalizing the conflict entirely. Expectations are misaligned, taking the you and the me completely out of the fight.
It really is a complete holistic toolkit for what the source describes as winning the outcome while keeping the relationship intact. And I think that is ultimately the most important takeaway from this entire discussion. It's not about winning the argument.
No, it's not. That is the amateur mindset. The amateur desperately wants to win the argument. They want to stand up and say, aha, I proved you wrong. And sure, great, you proved the client wrong, and now they fired you.
Right. You won the battle, but you completely lost the war.
The professional mindset is solely focused on winning the outcome. The end goal is to navigate the messy disagreement so that you ultimately get to the right, safe business decision, the realistic budget, the sane timeline, but the person sitting across from you still trusts you and respects you when the meeting ends.
In fact, if you do it right, they might actually respect you more. Because you didn't just roll over and say yes to a bad idea, but you also didn't act like a difficult jerk. You handled the pressure like a true C-suite leader.
That is the very definition of executive presence. It's grace under pressure. It's being the calmest, most rational person in the room. When everyone else is freaking out or getting wildly defensive, you are the one quietly saying, it seems expectations are misaligned. Suppose we looked at it this way.
That is exactly the person I want to work for.
Me too.
Now, Emma and John's source material ends with a very specific challenge for their listeners, and I want to pass that exact challenge on to everyone listening to our deep dive today.
It's a deceptively simple challenge, really. For the next week, just one single week, try to consciously eliminate the word "but" from your disagreements.
That sounds incredibly hard, I feel like, but is the basic glue that holds half my sentences together.
It is shockingly hard when you actually try to do it.
Yeah.
You will quickly realize just how addicted you are to that word. It's our ultimate verbal crutch. We use it to pause, we use it to pivot, we use it to soften bad news.
So if I'm arguing with my friend this weekend about which movie to see.
Try to catch yourself in the moment. Don't say, I really like action movies, but we saw that last time.
Okay, so instead I should try something like, I really like action movies, and since we saw that last time, maybe we could try a comedy tonight.
Notice how much better that feels in your mouth.
It really does.
Yeah.
It feels significantly less rejection-y. It feels like I'm making a helpful suggestion, not issuing a rebuttal.
That is the whole challenge. Catch the "but" before it leaves your mouth. Pause, take a breath, and swap it for a however or an and. Or honestly, just use a period. Let the sentence end. I like action movies. We did have pasta yesterday, though.
Just observe what happens to the energy of the conversation when you do that. I bet you'll find people are way less defensive around you.
You'll definitely find that your conversations move forward a lot faster with much less friction.
Before we officially wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final, somewhat provocative thought that came to my mind while I was reading through this source material.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we often think of diplomacy or corporate speak as being kind of fake, right? We think of it as sugarcoating the truth or beating around the bush. We constantly praise people in our culture for being brutally honest. But after breaking all of this down today, I'm starting to think that's entirely the wrong way to look at it.
Go on. That's an interesting reframing.
Maybe high-level professional communication isn't about hiding the truth at all. It's actually about translation. You're taking a raw, unfiltered truth like, this project is completely impossible, and you are actively translating it into a language that the other person can actually receive and process without panicking. Like, this timeline is optimistic.
I think that is a genuinely profound way to look at it, because if you speak a language, the other person simply cannot hear the language of blunt force trauma and ego attacks. You aren't actually communicating at all. You're just making noise in their direction.
Exactly. The truth is only useful if it actually lands. If I throw a raw brick at you, your only reaction is going to be to duck. But if I hand you that same brick wrapped in soft velvet, maybe you actually take it from me.
That is a fantastic image.
These tools we've discussed today, the yes and, the supposed simulation, the passive voice, they are the velvet. They are the careful delivery mechanism that ensures the hard truth actually lands safe and sound and get the job done.
And ultimately, that is what makes you incredibly valuable in any room. You aren't just a blunt truth teller, you are a sophisticated translator. You translate harsh reality into actual progress.
Well, I think on that perfectly stated note, we are going to wrap up this deep dive. I am definitely going to be carefully watching my bucks this week.
Same here, it's going to be a challenge.
Thank you so much for listening. Go out there and practice your suppose, polish up that passive voice, and we will see you on the next deep dive.
See that?
I want to try something a little different to start the deep dive today. I want to run a simulation.
A simulation. Okay, I'm game. What are the parameters?
I want you to close your eyes.
Yeah.
Listener, you too. Unless
Okay.
you're driving, obviously. But just imagine you are sitting in a conference room.
Okay.
It is that generic glass-walled room that literally every office has. You know the one. The air conditioning is humming just a little too loudly. It's maybe rattling a vent somewhere in the ceiling.
I can hear it.
The coffee in front of you is lukewarm. And it is 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Oh man, the graveyard shift of human attention.
Exactly. And at the front of the room, someone, maybe your colleague, maybe your boss, stands up. They smooth out their suit jacket, they pick up the clicker, they look at the screen, and they say this.
Laid on me?
Slide 4 demonstrates a 2.5% marginal increase in operational efficiency, contingent upon the implementation of the Q3 synergistic protocol regarding supply chain variance.
Oh,
God.
please make it stop.
It hurts, doesn't it?
It is actually physically painful. I can feel my brain initiating a shutdown sequence right now. It's like a defensive reaction.
That reaction right there, that feeling of your eyelids getting heavy, that sudden urge to check your email or secretly look at your watch under the table, that is exactly what we are dissecting today. Because that sentence I just read, that is the default setting for corporate communication.
It is. It's everywhere. It is what we call the robot voice.
The robot voice.
Yeah. It's this really strange phenomenon where perfectly normal, interesting, highly charismatic human beings put on a blazer, walk into a meeting room, and suddenly lose all ability to speak like a person. They start using words like synergistic and protocol and variance.
And they honestly think they sound smart.
Well, that's the tragedy of it. They genuinely think they sound professional. They think if I use big abstract words, people are going to take me seriously. But our sources for today, and we have a really fantastic set of materials to dive into today, focusing on strategic storytelling.
Wow.
They argued that this isn't just boring, it's actually dangerous.
Dangerous how? Like, I'm going to lose my job. Kind of dangerous.
Eventually, yeah. There's a quote in the source material from Emma and John, who did the original breakdown of this on the Learning English podcast, that really stuck with me. They call that robot voice the sound of a career stalling.
The sound of a career stalling. Wow. That is heavy. That is a really high-stakes statement for a random Tuesday afternoon meeting.
It sounds dramatic, but think about the mechanics of a career for a second. How do you actually move up?
You do good work?
You do good work, but you move up by influencing decisions. You need approval for budgets. You need buy-in for your projects. You need people to actually see your value.
Right.
If you cannot capture attention, you cannot transfer information. And if you can't transfer information, you have zero influence.
So the silence in the room when you're talking, it isn't respect. It's just people checking out.
Exactly. It's invisibility. You are up there talking, but nobody is actually hearing you.
Okay, so if the disease is the robot voice, what is the cure? Because that is our mission today, right? We are looking at strategic storytelling, turning data into drama.
Right. And I want to be very, very clear about something right off the bat, because I can already hear the eyes rolling from here.
Yeah, I mean, when people hear the word storytelling in a business context, they get really nervous.
They do. They think we are telling them to start their quarterly financial review with once upon a time, or that we want them to write some kind of fairy tale about the Q3 earnings report.
Once upon a time, in a magical kingdom of spreadsheets.
Exactly. We are not talking about fiction here. We aren't talking about fluff or making things up. We are talking about the actual mechanics of persuasion. We are drawing from a really rigorous breakdown of how narrative structures work in the human brain.
So it's science-backed.
Completely. The goal isn't to entertain people just for the sake of entertainment. The goal is to get them to say yes.
Yes.
Yes to the budget. Yes to the promotion. Yes to the new strategy you're pitching. This is a tactical deep dive today.
Oh, love that.
The target audience here isn't novelists. It is engineers, data scientists, middle managers, really anyone who has to take a pile of cold, hard facts and present them to a room full of human beings and keep them awake.
I really like that distinction, moving from just reading a spreadsheet to actually telling a story.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us operate under this false assumption, and I know I have definitely been guilty of this in the past, that the data itself is the story.
Oh, yeah.
Like if I did the hard work and the numbers are undeniably good, shouldn't that just be enough?
Ah, the logic trap.
The logic trap. Tell me about that.
It is probably the single biggest fallacy in the entire corporate world. We operate under this weird delusion that business is a strictly logic-based environment.
Right, because it's professional.
Right. We think I am a rational professional presenting rational data to other rational professionals. Therefore, if the logic holds up, the decision is just automatic.
What?
But human beings are not logic machines, not even the CFO, not even the CEO. We are emotion machines that use logic to justify our decisions.
Wait, say that again? Emotion machines that use logic to justify our decisions.
Think about the last really big purchase you made. Maybe a car. Or maybe a house. You probably made a spreadsheet, right?
Oh, absolutely. I had a whole pivot table going.
Sure you did. You compared gas mileage, interest rates, resale value, all the metrics.
Yep.
But ultimately, you bought the car because of how it made you feel when you actually sat in the driver's seat. You bought the house because you could vividly imagine your Christmas tree in the corner of the living room.
That is painfully accurate.
The logic your pivot table was just the permission slip you gave yourself to act on the emotion you were already feeling.
So when we use the robot voice, when we stand up and talk about synergistic protocols, we're essentially trying to speak code to a computer, but we're actually talking to a mammal.
Precisely. We are failing to engage the actual operating system of the human brain. Let's go back to that synergistic protocol example for a second. Why does that specific phrase feel so dead to us?
I mean, it's abstract. It doesn't really mean anything tangible.
It is an abstraction layer. Words like operational efficiency, variance, protocol, these words are intentionally designed to remove specific details. They are safe words.
Safe how?
Well, if I stand up and say we have a variance in the supply chain, that sounds a lot better, a lot safer than saying we lost $10,000 because a truck broke down.
Oh, I see. It's sanitized.
It is entirely sanitized.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the problem. The brain doesn't cling to sanitation. The brain clings to imagery. When I say operational efficiency, what picture pops into your head?
Honestly, nothing. Maybe just a gray box. Or a generic graph going up and to the right.
Exactly. No picture, no emotion, and therefore no memory. But if I told you, hey, we cut the time it takes to ship a box from 4 days down to 4 hours, you can see that.
Yeah, I can see the box actually moving. I can see the delivery truck.
So the very first step here, before we even get to the how-to of storytelling, is really a personal audit. We need to look at our own presentations and ask ourselves, am I hiding behind the robot voice?
Call it a boring audit. Look at your slides. Are you speaking like a literal user manual, or are you speaking like a human being?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's assume we have done the audit. We look at our slides and we realize, uh-oh, I am a robot.
Beep boop.
Right. And we want to change. The source material outlines a very specific mindset shift that has to happen before we change a single word on the slide. And this is the part that I think is really going to bruise some egos out there.
Oh, you are talking about the hero complex.
The hero complex.
Mm-hmm.
This hit me so hard when I read it. Because it is just so natural, right? You work incredibly hard on a project, you stay late at the office, you solve the massive crisis. When it is finally time to present, you naturally want to take a victory lap.
Of course you do. It's human nature. You want recognition. So the script usually goes something like this. I identified the problem. I rallied the team. I stayed up all night. I implemented the solution. Look at how amazing I am.
Me.
And here is the kicker with that. It might be factually true. You actually did do all of those things. But when you tell the story that way, how does the audience feel?
I guess. I mean, hopefully they feel impressed.
Maybe briefly, but mostly they just feel alienated.
Alienated? Why?
Because in any good story, there is only room for one hero.
One hero?
Think about a movie. You cannot have two protagonists fighting for the exact same screen time and the same spotlight. If you position yourself as the hero of the presentation, where does that leave the audience? Where does that leave your boss or your client?
I guess they're just the sidekicks. Or maybe just the audience watching me be great.
Exactly. They become mere spectators. And spectators do not buy in. Spectators just watch, they clap politely when it's over, and then they go home. In business, you don't want spectators. You want allies. You want active participants.
So if I am not the hero of my own presentation, who am I? Because I am the one standing there. I'm the one giving the presentation. I'm the one holding the clicker.
The source material uses this incredible analogy to fix this exact dynamic. And since we are both big movie fans, I think this is really going to resonate. They bring up Star Wars.
A classic for a reason.
So most leaders, most presenters, they walk into the boardroom thinking they are Luke Skywalker.
Right.
They think they are holding the lightsaber. They are there to blow up the Death Star. They are the absolute center of the universe.
But the source says, do not be Luke.
Do not be Luke. Be Yoda.
Be Yoda. Okay, let's unpack this. Because Yoda is, well, he's old. He's wrinkly. He lives in a literal swamp. Why on earth do I want to be Yoda?
Because Yoda is the one who makes the hero's journey actually possible. Yoda is the guide. He is the mentor. He doesn't fly in and destroy the Death Star himself. What does he do?
He trains Luke.
Right. He hands Luke the lightsaber. He gives him the training.
Right.
He shows him the path to victory.
I see. So in this border metaphor, if I am Yoda, who is Luke?
Your audience is Luke.
The audience is Luke Skywalker.
Yes. If you are pitching to a client, the client is Luke Skywalker. They are the ones staring down a massive problem, their own personal Death Star. They are terrified. They are losing market share, or their costs are too high. They don't know what to do. They desperately need a guide.
And if I come into that room saying, look how cool I am, I could destroy that Death Star all by myself, I am essentially stealing their glory.
You are stealing their agency. You are making them useless. But if you come in and say, hey, I see the Death Star. I know it is scary, but I have a map. I have a weapon. And if you take this weapon, you can destroy the Death Star.
Wow. That is a totally different psychological contract with the room.
Completely different, because now you aren't asking them to just sit back and admire you. You are asking them to trust you, and you are promising them that they will be the ones to win in the end.
It shifts the spotlight completely. The spotlight isn't glaring on the speaker anymore. It is shining directly on the listener.
And that right there is the absolute secret to engagement. Everyone cares mostly about their own story. We are all the protagonists of our own lives. If you make your presentation about their journey, their struggle, their victory, they will lean in. They literally have to.
Okay, this is great philosophy. Be Yoda. I really love it. But let's bring it down to the ground level for a minute. Let's say I have a quarterly business review, a QBR, this Friday. How does being Yoda change the actual words I say on Friday?
It changes the subject of your sentences.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, let's take the hero version first, the old way. You might stand up and say, I saved the account by implementing a new customer service protocol.
Okay, it's clear, it's factual, but it is very I-focused.
Now let's Yodify it. We need to focus on the client, who is our hero. We need to establish their struggle first. So it becomes the client was facing a massive crisis. They were about to lose 20% of their market share.
Okay, so we have established the villain, the obstacle.
Right. The stakes are suddenly high. Luke is staring directly at the Death Star. Then you introduce the guide that's you. You say, we stepped in to equip them with a brand new service strategy. You essentially handed them the lightsaber.
And what's the resolution in this version?
And as a result, they were able to turn the account around and secure their market position.
And they were able to turn it around.
Do you feel the difference? In the first version, you are the ultimate victor. In the second version, you are the catalyst for their victory.
It is subtle, but it feels so different. It feels a lot less like bragging and much more like partnership.
And strangely enough, by giving the credit away, you actually end up looking more competent. You look like the trusted advisor. You look like the sage. You look like the exact person they want in the room when the next Death Star inevitably shows up.
So the vocabulary we need to be adopting here, looking at the notes from the source material, we have words like challenge, obstacle, and transformation.
Yes. Instead of thinking of it as a status update, you need to think of it as a transformation arc. Where were they at the beginning? What was standing in their way? How did we help them get past that obstacle? And where are they now?
So we basically need to stop saying we fixed it and start describing the actual journey from the problem to the solution.
Exactly. It turns a dry report into a compelling narrative. And once you have that mindset locked in, once you truly realize you are the guide and not the hero, You need a framework, a structure to hang that story on, because you can't just ramble up there.
Right. Which brings us perfectly to the architecture of the story. And this is where the source material gets really, really specific. They talk about a structural framework called but therefore.
But therefore, yes. This is one of those concepts that I promise you, once you learn it, you will never be able to unhear it. You will start noticing it missing in every bad presentation you sit through, and you'll see it working in every good movie you watch.
It actually comes from screenwriting, doesn't it?
It does. It is actually famously associated with the creators of South Park, believe it or not, Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They have this strict rule for writing their scenes. They say that if you can connect your scenes with the words and then, you have a terrible, boring story.
And then and then trap.
And then trap is just a list. It is chronological, sure, but it is causally disconnected. Things just happen one after another.
Give us an example of and then trap in the typical business context. What does that actually sound like in a meeting?
It sounds like a laundry list of tasks. We launched the project in Q1, and then we hired 3 new staff members, and then we updated the software, and then profits went up by 5%.
Oh, man. I feel like I have sat through 1,000 meetings that sounded exactly like that.
We all have. It is just stuff that happened. There's absolutely no tension. There's no struggle. It is like a little kid telling you about their day. I went to school, and then I had lunch, and then I played at recess, and then I came home. It's cute when a kid does it, but are you on the edge of your seat? No.
So how do we fix it? How do we actually use but and therefore to build the architecture?
You have to actively introduce conflict and causality. That is what those 2 words do. But is the complication, therefore is the solution.
Let's break down the function of the word but first. Why is that little 3-letter word so incredibly powerful?
Because but signals a threat. It completely disrupts the status quo. From a purely cognitive standpoint, when the human brain hears the word but, it wakes up, it says, oh, something is wrong here. I need to pay attention right now to see how this gets resolved.
It is the inciting incident of the business story.
Exactly. And therefore is the pivot. It links the problem directly to the solution logically. It means the action you took wasn't just random. It was completely necessary because of the problem that arose.
Let's look at the specific case study from the source material to anchor this. They use a sales example. We just did the when clunk and then version of it. Sales were strong. And then we launched a product and then we won. Boring. Let's remix those same facts using the but therefore framework.
Okay, let's do it. Step 1 is the setup. You start by establishing the baseline. Sales were strong in Q1. Everything is fine.
And now, the but.
But suddenly, a major competitor launched a cheaper product.
Ooh. Okay, the music just changed in my head. Suddenly, that strong Q1 doesn't matter anymore. We are in immediate danger.
You feel that, right? That is tension. The audience is now silently asking you, well, what did you do about it?
Enter the therefore.
Therefore, we had to pivot our entire strategy completely. We decided to focus on quality over price.
And finally, the resolution to cap it off.
As a result, we didn't just survive the quarter, we actually captured the premium market.
That is, these exact same facts, right? Strong sales, a competitor, a pivot, and success. But the order of them and that specific connective tissue completely transforms it into an adventure.
Because it honors the struggle. I really think that is and then approach misses entirely, and then makes everything sound way too easy. It makes it sound like your success was just inevitable.
And nobody really connects with easy.
No. We connect deeply with struggle. We connect with overcoming obstacles. If you walk in and tell your boss everything was super easy and we won, they just think, okay, cool, whatever. But if you tell them we were in serious trouble, we fought incredibly hard, and we won, they think, wow, incredible job.
This framework seems like it could apply to almost anything, not just sales. It doesn't have to be a huge $1 million pitch. It could just be a weekly engineering update.
Absolutely. You could say, we were on track for the launch, that's the setup. But a critical security bug was found 2 days before that's the conflict. Therefore, the engineering team pulled an all-nighter to rewrite the core code, that's the action. And as a result, we launched on time and bug-free the resolution.
It gets a perfectly packaged micro-narrative.
And it keeps the audience totally oriented. They always know exactly where they are in the story, they know what the problem is, and they know what the solution is.
So we have the mindset down. We are Yoda, not Luke. We have the architecture, but therefore instead of and then. But now we run into a very real practical problem because we are still in a business meeting. And eventually, you have to show a slide with a hard number on it.
Ah, yes, the dreaded data dump.
The source material specifically called out the data nerds. And look, I love data. I love a good graph. But they make a really important cognitive point. The brain holds on to images, not raw numbers.
This is where we get into evolutionary cognitive science again. Evolutionarily speaking, our brains simply didn't evolve to understand abstractions like 500 terabytes or a 10% variance. We evolved to understand tiger, fire, food, shelter.
Like concrete things.
Tangible physical things you can touch or see.
Yeah.
If I throw a massive number at you, like 500 terabytes, that is just an abstract symbol. Your brain actually has to pause and do a calculation to understand what that even means. Okay, a gigabyte is this big, so a terabyte is, well, it's a lot.
It creates cognitive load. And if I stand up there and give you 10 of those numbers in a row rapid,
Your brain just throws its hands up and gives up. It filters it all out as background noise. This is exactly why people glaze over so badly during quarterly financial reports. It is not because they are stupid or lazy. It is because their brains are literally trying to conserve energy.
So how do we fix this for the data-heavy folks? How do we make the data actually sticky without just dumbing it down and losing the rigor?
We use data storytelling via metaphor. We have to contextualize the raw number. We have to do the work of translating the abstract into the concrete for them.
Let's look at the examples from the source material because they are really vivid. The first one is about that data storage metric we just mentioned.
Right. So let's say the raw data on your slide is our server capacity increased by 500 terabytes. Now, to a senior IT engineer, that might instantly mean something. But to the CEO or the marketing director sitting in the room, it is just a number. It's big, but how big? Is it big enough?
So the metaphor the source suggests instead is,
we now have enough storage to hold every single movie made in Hollywood for the next 50 years.
wow, okay, I instantly see that.
Yeah.
I can picture the movies, I can picture huge reels of film or a giant wall of Netflix icons.
Exactly. You feel the scale of the number. It transforms from a cold statistic into a visual reality. And suddenly, all the non-technical people in the room are nodding along. They get it.
There's another example in the material about cost savings that I think is even more powerful because it translates money into people.
Yes. This is an absolute classic. The raw data on the slide is, we saved $50,000 this quarter. Now, depending on the overall size of the company, that might sound like a massive amount of money, or it might sound like a rounding error. It is totally ambiguous.
Right. So how do we storytell that 50 grand?
You say, to put that in perspective, that pays for 2 new full-time engineers.
Boom. Suddenly that $50,000 isn't just cash sitting in an account. It is capacity. It is talent. It is 2 actual human beings sitting in chairs doing work for the company.
That is deeply persuasive. If you are asking a board for budget approval, or you're trying to show why your new efficiency measures actually matter, converting abstract dollars into people, or into new products, or into time saved makes the argument tangible.
And there is a very specific magic phrase the source gives us to make this transition really smooth. Because it can feel a little awkward to just randomly launch into a Hollywood movie metaphor out of nowhere.
To put that in perspective.
That
is your structural bridge. You state the raw number, you pause for a beat, and you say, to put that in perspective, and then you drop the metaphor. It clearly signals to the audience that you are about to do the hard work of translation for them.
It's like you're silently telling them, I know this number is dry and abstract. Let me help you see what it actually means.
It is an act of empathy for your audience, and they genuinely appreciate it.
But I do want to push back on this just slightly, because I can hear the really hardcore data analysts in our audience screaming right now. They're saying, but the metaphor isn't precise. 500 terabytes is a very exact mathematical number. The Hollywood movie thing is just a rough estimation.
That is entirely true, and that is exactly where the tension lies in business communication. The analyst deeply values precision, but the leader values impact. You have to ask yourself before you present, what is the actual goal of this meeting? Is the goal to be technically flawlessly perfect, or is the goal to be understood and to drive action?
That's the core trade-off right there. Precision versus retention.
Exactly. If I give you the exact raw number, you will forget it the second you leave the room. If I give you the Hollywood metaphor, you will remember it at dinner tonight. You will literally tell your spouse, hey, did you know we have enough server storage for 50 years of movies?
Retention wins. Because if they remember it, they can actually act on it later.
And look, you can always put the raw data in the appendix of the deck. You can have the massive spreadsheet ready and available for the deep dive if they specifically ask for it. But the headline, the actual thing you say out loud with your voice, needs to be the metaphor.
I think that is a fantastic compromise. Respect the data in the background, but deliver the story in the room.
It's all about meeting the audience exactly where they are. And most of the time, let's be honest, they are overwhelmed, They're tired, and they're just looking for something simple to hold on to.
Okay, so we have the setup, we have the conflict, we have the metaphor. We are building a really, really solid presentation here, but we aren't quite done yet. Because you can have a great story, but if you don't know how to end it properly, you just kind of fade out. You finish the last slide and just say, yeah, that's it. Thanks.
The landing is absolutely critical. In a movie, flashing the end on the screen is enough. You get up and walk out of the theater. But in a business setting, a story cannot simply stop. It requires a destination. It requires action.
This is what the source material calls the call to action, or the CTA. But they actually take it a step further than marketing usually does. It isn't just saying, please sign this document. It's about painting something they call the new normal.
Yes. You have just taken the audience on a journey. You've shown them the conflict, the but. You've shown them the solution, the therefore. And you've shown them the victory. Now, you need to vividly show them what life looks like after the victory is won.
You are selling the future state.
Correct. You are fundamentally answering the audience's unasked question, why does this matter to me tomorrow morning?
The specific technique they suggest for this is called the imagine technique.
It's remarkably powerful. You use transition phrases like imagine a world where, or what this means for us going forward is.
The example from the source is about pitching the adoption of new software. And again, instead of focusing on the technical features of the software, which is exactly what the robot voice would do, they focus entirely on the human result of the software.
Right. Let's do the robot voice ending first. It would be, so, please approve the purchase of this software. It has a 99% uptime in SSL encryption. Any questions?
So boring.
Yeah.
And honestly, I do not care about uptime right now.
The new normal ending, the storytelling ending, is if we adopt this software, imagine a world where the entire team leaves the office at 5 p.m. every single Friday because all of the reporting is completely automated.
I can literally feel the relief in that conference room.
Right, because you aren't selling the software anymore. You are selling the feeling of the result. You are selling freedom. You are selling stress relief. You are selling a happier, more rested team.
That is the crucial difference between a feature and a benefit, but it's amplified by storytelling. You are placing the listener directly into that future scene. They can physically see themselves walking out the door to their car at 5 p.m., and once they visualize it, they want it.
And once they emotionally want it, getting the logical yes becomes infinitely easier. Because now, saying no to the software budget means they are actively saying no to leaving at 5 p.m.
That is some really high-level persuasion right there.
It is. And it's ethical persuasion, too. You aren't tricking them or lying to them. You are just vividly showing them the true human value of what you're proposing.
This new normal concept essentially replaces the standard summary slide that everyone uses, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. A summary looks backward. It says, here's what I just finished telling you. A new normal looks forward. It says, here is exactly where we are going together. Leaders lead. They point to the future. If you end your presentation by looking backward, you aren't leading anyone.
That is a profound distinction. Summary versus vision.
And just think about the sheer energy in the room. If you end with a bulleted summary, the energy is completely flat. If you end with a compelling vision of a better future, the energy is incredibly high. You want them to leave that room feeling excited to act.
So what does this all mean when we put it together? It means we have a real toolkit now. We have a concrete way to stop being robots and start being guides.
Let's quickly recap that toolkit just to firmly lock it in for everyone, because we covered a lot of ground today.
Number one is the mindset. You are not the hero of the presentation. You are the guide. Your job is to be Yoda and hand the lightsaber to the audience.
Number two is the structure. Banish the phrase, and then from your vocabulary completely, replace it with bat-bod, therefore, to create real tension and a logical resolution.
Number three is visualization. Do not trust raw, abstract numbers to do the work. Use concrete metaphors. Use the phrase to put that in perspective to make the data physically sticky.
And finally, the landing. Don't just abruptly stop. Paint the new normal. Sell the destination using the phrase, imagine a world where...
It is a really comprehensive system. It covers the beginning, the middle, and the end of literally any communication you have to do. Now, the source material actually issues a challenge to its listeners, and I think we should absolutely pass that challenge along to our listeners right now.
Absolutely. The challenge is this. Find one upcoming email or presentation you have to give, just one. Look at it critically. Find the but. Find the actual conflict in the information you are sharing, and rewrite it as a mini-story using these specific tools.
It might feel a little awkward at first. You might feel like you're being slightly too dramatic for a Tuesday.
You will feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
But the metric of success isn't how you feel, it is how the audience reacts. The source says, watch people's eyes. See if they actually look up at you instead of staring down at their phones under the table.
That is the real ultimate test.
Yeah.
If you can get their eyes off their screens and onto you, you are winning.
And honestly, in today's corporate world of endless distraction, holding someone's attention is a literal superpower. It is the ultimate competitive advantage you can have.
The source material also gave us a little teaser for their next topic, which sounds absolutely fascinating. They're going to cover crisis management.
Oh, that is the really high-stakes version of storytelling. What to say when you have made a massive, catastrophic mistake.
What to say when you've made a massive mistake. I feel like we all definitely need that deep dive.
We definitely do, but we'll save that for another time.
Before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Something that builds on everything we talked about today. Think about the massive rise of AI right now.
Right.
If an AI can generate a flawlessly accurate, perfectly formatted Q3 synergistic protocol variance report in roughly 2 seconds, what is your actual job?
That is the million-dollar question.
The AI can generate the data. The AI can write the summary. The only human value left in that room is the emotion. The only unique value you bring is the ability to look another human being in the eye and tell them a story that makes them care.
If you can't do that, you're competing with a machine that works for free.
Exactly. So for today, we want you to take these tools. Stop being the robot, because we already have enough robots.
Be Yoda.
Be Yoda. Go tell a great story.
And get that. Yes.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We will catch you next time.